Let's meet the Feebles. But it is not the Sacred Crest.
It is not.
The
No.
Sacred Crest, it is an entirely functional, serviceable pulp fantasy story where if you read this in a magazine and you didn't know who wrote it, you would pass through and be like, kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Some weird stuff going on there. I kind of liked it. And you would move on. It would not...
And thankfully short.
Not,
brevity was exercised here, and that's just that. I mean, a lot of things about it impressed me over the previous work, but the brevity of both single passages, sentences, scenes, and like the story itself has shown a remarkable development of restraint, because we have seen what Field can do when he goes balls deep.
Yep.
This is not the story.
One of the themes. Yeah, one of the things that I thought was kind of funny, going back to the sort of the disdain for the soldiers that were under the captain's command, was I thought it was interesting that the sort of evil undead shows up and decides to kill all of them first with the head popping action, even though they never partook of any of the flesh of like the sacred stag.
Sacred, yeah.
Because they were bitches.
Yeah, and I was like, I was thinking like, wait a minute, and when I was reading it the first time, I was like, wait a minute, are like Grignr and the captain gonna like get let off because they actually ate the thing? And the undead is like, I like your style. These guys, not so much. So they're going to die. But you guys are cool. And I was like, whoa, that would be...
They get a gig for being a candy ass.
Yeah. I was like, so is the moral of the story, don't be a candy ass? And that was kind of where I was going. Where I was like, well, I mean, that would be a hell of a moral. Like, I don't know if anybody's done that before. Like, so for a minute
that
there...
would be wild.
Yeah, no, for like in 1972, I was like, goddamn, But obviously that's not how it went. But I did find that kind of just interesting as a concept, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna share this later. So, but I thought that was
I felt the troops also had a certain Gilligan-esque quality to them.
Yeah.
I could see them on the desert aisle going, Skipper.
Yeah.
Just they seemed like Dale does a good job in like reinforcing like that maybe Grignr and the captain aren't being entirely unreasonable in their judgmentalness of these other men.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, you killed the sacred beast, and that means death upon us, and da-da-da-da. Okay, where'd you get this information from? Like, who told you? Well, everyone knows it. Like, okay, look, you guys really need to learn to vet your sources here, all right? Like,
define everyone.
It's one of those... It's one of those things where these two guys are outsiders. Like, both Grignr and the captain are both outsiders. They're not privy to the sacred traditions of this land. So when they're confronted with the sacred thing, they're like, that thing's not really sacred.
They're like, yeah, whatever.
What do you
didn't taste? I mean, it was good. Didn't taste that sacred though. I mean, it's a deer.
Tasted fine to me,
I mean, this is a deer, man. What makes it different from any other deer that's in the forest that we may or may not? Well, it's a stag. I mean, Gringer's like, well, I kind of respect this stag. It's an awesome creature of beauty and strength, but I'm going to eat it anyway, as I've eaten many things before. So.
Grignr doesn't give a fuck. That's one through line to Grignr's character, which carries over from Eye of Argon to here, is that Grignr does not give a fuck.
He does not.
It's not like the stag was like a weird color or like had some kind of. It was just like, oh, it's a fucking stag.
It was all. I think it was supposed to be all white, which was kind of unusual. So it's sort of like the theme of like the white roebuck or whatever.
Right.
So it's like so that is unusual, and I mean that was part of like the whole mythological bit that I sort of because that's a fairly common symbol
It just has that Pennsylvania wasting disease. Don't eat that. But wait, what really happened? They got the prion disease from eating the stag, and like that whole mummy thing,
and their brains exploded.
The captain and Grignr were just tripping balls from the prion disease, and none of that actually happened.
It was all a dream.
It was a bad trip, man.
Fortunately, Tice manages to skip over that trope, and we should all be grateful for that.
Yeah.
No, to what you were saying, Mike, I think one of the things that comes forward in this story is that the evil thing is legitimately evil and just wants to smash things and destroy humanity, and it doesn't really matter whether you partook of it or not.
Right.
Like the gods don't care.
Right.
They're going to like. You're going to suffer because they feel like making people suffer, and that's just what they're going to do.
I mean, for eating something you weren't supposed to eat, I guess it's a little better than what Poseidon came up for Minos for, not sacrificing the bull he was supposed to sacrifice. Like, okay, fine, your wife's going to fuck it. Like, what? That seems kind of out of scale. Like, look, you were supposed to sacrifice it to me. You didn't. You decided to keep the bull. Well, now your wife's going to be horny for it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean,
But it's but it's also,
Oh, the Greeks.
Yeah, well, yeah, they had a lot of things to work out. But I mean, to your point, Andrew, I think it's there's a seal that was broken that was basically keeping this thing at bay. And that's Kitty. And it was on this deer for whatever reason, and you break the seal, creature gets out.
I mean, I'm just saying, don't put a sacred seal reliant on the death of something that tastes good, man. Like, that's just like, I don't know, maybe put it on a skunk. No one's gonna try to eat the skunk.
Yeah, there's
like, you gotta
that's
be
the
really
thing, though.
desperate.
That's the thing, like, it's not usually the humans that decide the sacred seal is on this thing. It's, what we've been saying is it's always the gods who say, don't do this thing. Don't touch this one thing. And if you touch this one thing, we're going to rain suffering upon you.
Yeah, but this isn't
because
really
we want to know if you can follow instructions.
That's stupid. People, any gods would know that no human has ever followed any instructions that seem to go cross purposes of what they want to fucking do. That's just, don't test people you know are gonna fail. You're building in failure to your test. Like, put it in something that you can at least be a little judgmental about them eating, like a possum or a skunk. Like, oh God, you ate a possum or skunk and you weren't like starving. The fuck is wrong with you, man?
You're right, but we're also talking about like a seal that brings forth a mummy that smashes people's heads.
Yeah, so like a skunk.
We're not dealing with a deity that wants to have a relationship with people. We are dealing with Cthulhu.
We are-ish, except it's never really made clear what put the seal on the deer to seal away the mummy.
Yeah, that was an interesting part. Yeah, like, what is the cosmology of, like...
How is this working exactly? I'm not saying that we need an explanation, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of interpretation that can be left here. And
that's an interesting thing. Go ahead.
I don't put this on Theo because, again, mythologically, the white hart, the sacred deer, mummy, okay, well, not really related, but whatever the fuck. But there is some thought of like, okay, so because like the sacred hind or the white hart, that kind of thing from Greek mythology, they were particularly the golden hind. They were particularly beauteous animals, and like pure and something like that. And the gods came after you for killing it because you have killed a pure creature that was favored by them. Now, in this context, you have killed a creature that is sealing away an ancient evil, and I'm like, you see. I feel like the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Like,
this would be an opportunity for one of the characters, one of the soldiers, to be like an ex scholar, a half priest, someone who can come forward with that cosmology you were talking about. Like, here's the god that did this, and this happened long ago, and this is what happens if this gets fucked with, and Grignr and the captain can still be like, that's bullshit.
Or the fucking mummy monologues. Like, I'd even take the mummy monologuing.
Something.
Yeah. Something. The the cosmology of the Grignr universe is still not really well spelled out. Perhaps if there had been more stories, he would have worked that stuff out because he already added a new country in this story, because that's where the captain's from. He's from some Mongol country somewhere. That's the vibe that I got. I think it's called Borthunia.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But
again,
I think he's just kind of building this on the fly.
Yeah.
And again, this is nitpicking. This is the pickingest of nitpicking. Like, it's just like, I gotta eviscerate this somehow. That's what I do, man.
We're not really eviscerating this. We're critiquing it like a legitimate story, because it is a legitimate story. Yeah, it's not the Eye of Argon.
It is not. It's not.
This rises to the level of being critiqued as literature.
This is actually let's pump the brakes a little bit there, Thun. It is definitely better than most of the 80s sword and sorcery movies I saw after the Conan craze started. And there's some stinkers in that. But I think me and Mike have watched a few of them together. Oh
yeah. No, Basic Cable is your friend sometimes, and sometimes it is not your friend.
It's not your friend, all right? Look, I will say I will put it on slightly less sensical than the first Conan movie.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of build up in the Conan stuff with world building and all that stuff going on, and it was helped a lot by coming from a rich background. Whereas, a supposed Hyborian age of man's prehistory or some shit like that, and Grignr is full cloth, is come from full cloth in that,
100%
in that genre, but so he doesn't have as much to work with because he's coming at this like, look at this whole thing. I have come from whole cloth that I'm still trying to figure out here.
Yeah.
Which that's fair. That's fair. Like I said, it's not. I did it, like I said, upon initially reading it, I had a few concerns because I'm like, okay, the style of purple prose is unchanged. It's not as redundant, thank God.
It's restrained. He learned.
He learned. Like, okay, the tree, the thing that he's describing as a tree is actually a tree and not like a dog's penis or something. It's.
Who are you, Iggy Pop? What is that?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what I do when I'm asleep. Come on. Here comes Johnny yen again. With a liquor and drugs and a sex machine. He's gonna do a little striptease.
Another striptease.
Hey man, where'd you get that lotion? There you go. A song about doing heroin, I'm pretty sure.
No.
Iggy Pop?
No.
Never.
What are you? What?
Never. Never touch the smack.
Never ride that horse, man. Never ride that horse.
He was never on the H train. What are you talking about?
He was just joking. It was irony. What are you talking about?
And just like that, Genuine song's actually about a horse, but
Now, to be fair, Lust for Life really was, he recorded that in Berlin. It was after he got clean. But yeah.
After him and David Bowie decided to go to Berlin, the heroin capital of the world to kick heroin.
Or
It
or
worked
to
out
die.
great for them.
You know, like they
Or
were like,
die.
yeah, they were like, we're either gonna do this or we're just gonna, you know, so
And instead, they made 4 albums.
yeah.
I
well,
mean, we got David Bowie's
stay
song
busy,
that was
yeah.
later covered by
Yeah.
I can't remember who, Heroes,
mm.
which was a good
Yeah.
song.
Yep.
Heroes and what was the other Bowie album? Shit. And then Iggy Pop did The Idiot and Lust for Life, and they all came
Yep.
out in 77.
Yep.
And 2 Bowie albums.
Yep.
So they won.
They did.
Won.
Oh, they
They're
did.
winners.
Absolutely.
But Grignr was not written by Bowie or Pop, nor do I think with the assistance of heroin or maybe some Bud Light, maybe some Budweiser. I mean, you know,
Yeah, a little, maybe that. But other than that, this comes across just like Eye of Argon comes across as very sincere. And
Yep.
that's what makes Eye of Argon so funny is how sincere it is.
it
He's
is
the
very
best-
sincere.
The
I
best
think-
So Good It's Bad is made by someone who's trying genuinely.
Yes.
Again, as compared to Eye of Argon, I feel Phil keeps the things he understands a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, if this had come out and not Eye of Argon, just this had been published and not Eye of Argon,
Mm-hmm.
if someone at Osfan had been like, you know what, you need to take this and you need to work on it, because this is not ready for prime time, my son. Try again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he put some more work in there. He came out with something like the Sacred Crest. Like, the amount of growth you see over the course of 2 years from one story to the other makes me feel like if he had kept going, he could have found a real stride, maybe fix some of the other things that we're talking about, maybe dial
desperately
back on
needed
one or
an-
two.
he still desperately needed an editor, but like,
Yeah,
Who
but
doesn't?
every author
Who
needs an
doesn't?
editor, right?
yeah, who doesn't?
Every author needs an editor, and there's growth here that makes me feel like he could have become a workable fantasy author.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, in
That
a
I agree.
world
That I agree
where Raymond Feist has bestsellers,
Sure.
best-selling series, and in that world, there was room for Jim Tice.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I have read some dog shit fiction in my life. All right,
Yeah,
like
we all
I've read-
have.
Oh yeah.
I have read some shit that I don't even know how this. I mean, come on, we live in a world where the Twilight books got published. For Christ's sake.
Look, I enjoyed reading me some Raymond Feist back in the day, but like I'm not gonna pretend like it's high literature, okay?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely schlock,
I think-
but I mean it was schlock that I enjoyed at the time.
I mean, look, we
Sure.
we can't all come up with a Jack Vancian masterpiece. All right.
No. And
No.
I think that this is a far more workable story, you know, the Sacred Crest, than the Eye of Argon, and like I said before, you know, this is definitely like an illustrative example, or also lesson in less is more,
The title is even better.
because no,
The title's way better.
it's
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense. It gives you way more of an idea of what the nature of the story is going to be. We have a far less complex setting. We have basically 1.5 settings.
We have a character with a motivation. Our main character has a motivation.
Yeah.
Like, I am trying not to get my ass whooped here because I just got handed an ass whooping, and I'd really just like to rethink my thoughts here for a bit.
Trying to get out with my life.
At no point do we not understand what's happening or why characters are doing things.
Yep.
Be it because
Everything that every character is doing makes complete sense within the context that we are given, and things proceed logically
and linearly.
toward a conclusion.
Yep.
Well, not entirely
Yes.
linear. There is some flashbacks, but the flashbacks work in context. You can tell that the flashback is a flashback.
Yes.
You know, like the exposition
everything
just doesn't come out
proceeds-
of nowhere, and you're like, "Oh, what the fuck? Now where
Yeah,
am I?
yeah.
What?"
Who's talking?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Gringer gripped
No.
his mighty shaft. What's going on here?
No, everything Grignr does and says makes complete sense. he's not like illogical as a character. He doesn't do that thing where he's like he switches on and off from being rational and being, ludicrous like he does in Eye of Argon in the same chapter.
Man still has a problem getting captured all the goddamn time, though.
I mean, there is that.
Hey, battles have consequences. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't, but he gets captured an awful lot. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I understand it's necessary for conflict, but, still.
Yeah, and there's you were talking about themes, Kieran. The themes of this story are other than other than
Brokeback Mountain.
Other than Brokeback Mountain subtext, other than that, there's a theme of if you want to talk about an animating idea that is present in the text, it's the idea of warriors versus soldiers.
Mm.
I am actually, when you said
guys
that, when you say that, I'm reminded of a scene from the original Conan the Barbarian where this chieftain is lamenting, how will my sons know, do not understand the value of war? What is the meaning of life? And Conan's like, to crush your enemy, to see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentations of women. But like right before that gets said, it's like this chieftain lamenting that his sons don't understand the old ways and are soft.
Yeah. It's the certain people. There was an ancient Greek who wrote that out of every 100 men in a battle, 10 of them are useless and shouldn't be there. 80 of them are just there because they're told they have to be there, and they will follow whatever's going on. 9 of them are fighters, and 1 of them is a leader. And it's that kind of like breakdown of, there's followers and there's leaders, and there's guys who are, they just want to drive their enemy before them and they don't really care.
And if you think about it,
the captain...
This came out a full 10 years before the Conan the Barbarian movie came out. So Thiel would have had to read this by reading the direct Howard or read similar type of fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
To pull that kind of thing. He wouldn't have just seen, I saw this on Conan and I think this is cool. No, this predates this, so...
No, Tice was working off of the Robert Howard Conan stories.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Anything that was in Conan comic books or other pulp fantasy stuff. I don't know what other pulp fantasy stuff there was, but he was reading. He was reading off the
Doc
stories,
Brass,
and he was a fan.
Or Doc Brown.
Sure.
Yeah. Doc Savage.
Doc Savage.
Well, that's
Doc Savage.
Doc Savage is a different kind of story. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Doc Savage is more
but
like
it's still pulp. It's more superhero-y pulp, but it's pulp. But clearly, Thice was well read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was trying. You can see that in Eye of Argon, how hard he's trying to make something awesome.
Yep.
And he's just it's errors of youth. You know?
But it's not like this is. All right. Here's the thing. The way he writes, nobody talks like this, but plenty of people write like this. So this was coming from a person who read.
Sure.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, he wanted to make his own version of this stuff because he was such a fan of it.
Yeah.
And he did his first go round, and it was trying too hard, and it became something.
Mm-hmm.
It became Doom, and Doom on his writing career is what it became. And the lesson of the Sacred Crest is he could have had one.
Oh, sure.
Because
I feel
how much he grew from this, and what growth there could have been, but
I feel if this would have been discovered around the same time, or discovered even 2 years when he wrote this, 2 years after he was discovered via the Eye of Argon, I feel his life would have taken a very different path.
Yeah, his.
I feel that even though as much as people like to crap on it, if they would have seen this, they would have been like, well, wait a minute. This shows real
He's
improvement.
also the guy that did this.
Yeah.
This shows real improvement.
It does show real improvement, which is why I'm glad it's out now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, people can see it and read it, and is it a masterpiece? No.
No, but it's better.
It's so much better. It's a story.
Yeah.
It's a functioning pulp fantasy story.
Yep.
And
it's everything Eye of Argon wanted to be and wasn't.
This is feel good. Thice going in and like you said before, showing restraint. Cutting off the fat, trimming the fat, because I'm pretty sure that he didn't just put this one out without revising it. Like, this definitely feels of something that was taken and then revised and worked on and revised a bit more and trimmed down from something original.
Yeah, he shaped it, worked at it, and looked at it, and he'd learned enough over the course of 2 years to like the first thing I come up with, that first the end isn't the end of the story. You have to then go back and knock around on it some more.
So if I might theorize what I think the precursor Sacred Crest looked like before he edited it and then published it, I suspect the initial story probably actually broke down him being approached by the prince and the rebellion of the king and all that, instead of it being in flashback form, was probably in the original text as leading up to this part of the story. Is what I would
That's
guess.
an interesting take, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. There may be some added backstory, yeah.
And he may have even written what Grignr did immediately after this in relation to the prince and the king and all that. But I think he probably wisely, as we can see here, went back and said, okay, it is important to know, well, how did Grignr get into this? But you only need to know so much, before it takes away from it. He gives you what you need to know. Well, here's Grignr now, but not so much that it goes off the rails, It doesn't detract from what he's trying to do. It's much more focused.
Yeah. When it's, like I said earlier, I felt like a lot had happened in between Eye of Argon and this story, and I do feel like we get enough background to understand where we're coming into the action, but it genuinely made me kind of curious about some of the things that had happened before, and I was like, okay, so, like, that's a good thing. Like, if I'm asking myself, well, I kind of want to know a little bit more about what came before. I mean, there's a whole... That's a huge sign of progress, especially compared to the Eye of Argon, where I was like, wait, what? Huh?
I don't know what's happening now, and I kind of don't want to know, and what happened before makes no sense to what's going on now, and fuck what happens in the future. Whereas this one, you're like, okay, I see what's going on, and I see how we got here, and how did we get here in more detail? Like, what... I want to know. I really want to know. What's the backstory of this mummy? Like, I didn't give a fuck about those priests in the Eye of Argon, except they were just, like, weird, molesty, gropey priests, Like, that got kicked in the dick, or something to that extent.
We'll form a cult. We'll show them.
Where did the captain come from?
Whereas, like, okay, like, what's the story of this mummy? Like, was there a sarcophagi it was sealed in before this? It just came, were they over its tomb? What? I kind of want to know.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, Mike, this is a good thing. Like, it's not like him leaving out these details necessarily was a bad thing. It was more, it was the less is more. Like, well, now I kind of want to know,
Right.
Yeah, leave him wanting more. Like, the story is about the violation of this thing, and he focuses entirely on that. Grignr kills the deer that violates the sacred thing. People discover that the sacred thing has been violated, and then this is paid off.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the story. There's nothing else.
Yep. I mean, it has certain slasher movie type aspects to it, only not so goddamn drawn out and pointless. Like, He could have drawn it out and had each individual sub-soldier like die off screen, or like they found the bodies and dragged it out. No, Thiel's not doing this shit. He's going straight to the punch.
Well, and
Like,
and
Mummy does some shit.
yeah, well, and it's there's some horror tropiness in this story, but I mean, this is actually almost a whole decade before the, about 8 years before the takeoff of, like the slasher genre in general. That wasn't really there were a few slasher films in the 60s and 70s, but they were so niche that they weren't even really a subgenre.
You mean like Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah, like that. This was years before that even. So like, so I did think that was interesting. And and you're right. Like there is definitely like a sort of a slasher element with this whole mummy in this particular story. So yeah, I mean, some of these themes are certainly cinematic ones, but also years before this stuff sort of hit the masses on the big screen.
I think that's a good thing, because again, one of the things that I have found tiresome in slasher movies is just like, man, y'all are really drawing out this shit. Like, you're putting too much time. Like, nobody is reacting in any logical way after they find the first goddamn body. They're like, oh, let's just hang around and see what the fuck happened. No, a body has been found in an area where there ought not be bodies, and we know who this body belongs to, goddammit. Let's get the fuck out of Dodge. Whereas here, holy shit, a thing happened. Well, we have no time to react to this.
Yep.
No, you're right about that. That works really well, actually.
Exactly.
Like, there's a warning of a thing, and then it shows up and it starts doing stuff. And the only reason Grignr escapes is because of a happenstance.
Yep.
Like,
Exactly.
The evil monster is really powerful and evil.
Yeah. And you don't have a moment like, oh, well, why didn't Grignr do this? Why didn't Grignr do that? Like, he just discovered about this curse, and he don't even believe in this shit. And what reason does he have to believe that, because these guys already proven themselves to be cowardly and craven and afraid of everything? Like, this could be an old wives' tale that their grandmother told them to make them not eat deer or try to turn them into vegetarians. I don't know.
Sure.
Or just make them not eat the king's deer so that they don't get in trouble. Like one of those, you turn this law into a legend so that you have less problems to have to try to explain the shit,
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just say it's magical evil than try to explain the socio-economic injustices of monarchy,
Yep. Oh, see the violence inherent in the system. See the violence inherent in the system. Help, help, I'm being repressed.
We're bloody peasants.
Oh, you see that? Oh, he must be the king.
No,
how can you tell?
like,
He's the only one that doesn't have shit all over him.
Yeah, all over him.
Facts. Grignr has no opportunity to respond. There's no Eagles to Mordor out for him. This is just how it is. And what the story does is it gives Grignr a moment where he might have someone that would like be his friend.
Yeah.
He might have that. The story almost makes you think like these guys are just gonna go run off and do awesome stuff. And just like, be like some Fritz and Leiber type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that you get that vibe. Like maybe one of them's the Grey Mouser and one of them's Farfit. And instead, the evil thing that Grignr did smashes it. So in the end, Grignr ends up being his own worst enemy.
Yep.
And the thing also about this is that by reading the story, really the cursed mummy aspect of it, it's not broadcast, but at the same time, it's not put forth. He doesn't play his hand so early as that Grignr could reasonably, or anyone else, have a reasonable aspect to even prepare for this shit.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like in Eye of Argon where we have a chapter 3.5 where we get the scene set where it's like, here's this place with this Eye of Argon that evil stuff is gonna happen in.
Yep.
No. Everything stays in one place, and so it just kind of works in from the out. So the story gets to unfold in a very natural way.
Yeah.
So, Jim Tice, we hardly knew you.
So
Is the
no,
point that
I'm
I
gonna
think
have
we're
to
all
say
trying to make.
no, really. I think I think what it comes down to is, like we had said the last time we covered his works, is that I feel this just reinforces the tragedy that the man's life was. You know?
Yeah. Like
I think, honest to God, he deserved better than he got.
He did. Like we were saying that based on Eye of Argon, just because of the circumstances of the way it became a meme.
Yeah.
And how he got nothing out of it, and how he was 16 when he wrote it, and this wasn't really fair.
No.
And now, having read what he wrote 2 years later when he was 18,
huge improvement.
he definitely got hosed.
Yeah.
He definitely got hosed. He could have been a fantasy author.
Absolutely.
Hell, he was already pretty much on his way there, you know?
He was based on Sacred Crest. Like I said, if this appeared in some magazine, some pulp mag in the 70s, and people read it, it might have been considered mid-tier, but no one would have batted an eye at its inclusion.
But mid-tier is respectable.
Yeah.
Especially back then, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll be honest, like, especially, like I said, it viewed in contrast to his previous infamous work. I think if, like, someone would have even bothered to dig to see if he had done anything else, and really put any kind of, like, research into it instead of just deciding let's just shit on him, that the whole infamy of Eye of Argon could have been used in conjunction with the Sacred Crest to really, like, boost him into the next level. Like, this could have... Eye of Argon could have worked positively for him, is what I'm saying.
I think no one cared about him at all.
Yeah.
I think they zeroed in on Eye of Argon in the way that when you read it, it has this hilarious effect on you. And I think everyone just keyed into that, and nobody gave a shit about who wrote it. Nobody cared. Like, the chapbook that was published in the 70s didn't even have his name on it. The guy who wrote the retelling of Eye of Argon, Jeff Bottoni, who I've also emailed, he said, look, I think Eye of Argon is kind of in public domain because it was widely circulated and Tice never attempted to control copyright.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which is why he was able to basically retell it without owing anything to anyone. I don't know that Jim Tice has a literary estate.
No.
Okay.
It's kind of this weird quirk in copyright law, which is why I feel confident that I can write my own Grignr the Accordion story, which is currently in chapter 3.
Nice.
And be completely comfortable with it. The working title is The Thing in the Deep, but that sounds a little too Lovecrafty, so I'm thinking I'm moving towards, like, Cursed Crown.
Okay.
But it's going to be fun. But, like, it's this weird quirk of copyright law where it's like, because nobody cared about him, they just cared about Eye of Argon. Like, so 2 years later when he puts out Sacred Crest on a fanzine he's working on, like, nobody cares.
Now, here's my question. How does having read the Sacred Crest affect your particular Grignr story in terms of how you're approaching it?
I'm going to have to update the mythos. Because what I did was I took Eye of Argon and Grignr the Accordion, which is the retelling of it, and that parody volume, which is the Further Tales of Grignr the Barbarian, because one or two of those stories rise above parody and actually function as stories. So I decided that they're all canon. So I have even the ones that are, like, ridiculous. I'm just kind of like, I've just got outlines of all of them, and I'm like, there are certain facts that are helping me build the world. So now I just have to use Sacred Crest and, like, add Sacred Crest into that.
I think the way in which Sacred Crest changes the narrative for you, as it were, is that it changes, I think, characterization for Grignr.
Yes. I am writing it in first person. So Grignr is the narrator of the story.
Interesting.
And yes. And it's kind of, he's got a kind of an interesting voice because I can't do the thing that I do with like Drunk Vampire Hunter or Rand Thrax in the Cantilever Jones stories, where just these guys are constantly overhearing themselves and commenting on what they're saying, which is, you know, pure Stephen Brust. But so I have to, like, he has to be restrained. Like, he's Grignr. He's not literate. He's not stupid, but he's not like, he has no pretensions. He's a bruiser, and he's going to observe things like Riley, but never with like, you know, he's going to speak with bluntness.
True.
Right.
He's not going to be tending towards purple prose himself in his description of his adventures.
You know, the prose is not going to be purple at all. He's just like commenting on things, and he's a little bit wry about things, but he's not really working at overhearing himself. He's just telling what's happening. And
I mean, might be a few oaths by the gods of blah blah blah. This is some bullshit. You know.
Right on.
The beard of Merc is his go-to.
By the hoary,
because,
shaggy balls of Neptune, what is going on here?
That kind of thing, like, because it's Mrfk in Eye of Argon, but
that's right. That's right.
And it's unpronounceable, and in Grignr the Accordion, Batoni made it Merc, Myrk, so I'm going with that.
Okay.
And it's like by the something beard of Merc. The something being whatever's appropriate to this situation. Like, he has to go for a swim after a boat in, like, the first chapter. So it's like, by the sodden beard of Merc, and then he jumps in the water and goes. And that's kind of, like, the go-to for him. Like, there are going to be other gods, but I haven't come up with them yet. And there's a reference to the gods of the Seven Plains in Sacred Crest.
Right.
So I'm going to have to inculcate that. Because obviously, since Tice wrote it, it's canon.
Canon.
Yeah, it has to be canon.
Yes, it's canon. So, you know, it's next month. Walt Jeschek, who was Tice's friend who published Sacred Crest, is trying to do a panel at a sci-fi convention.
Okay.
Talking about Jim Tice, and he's wanting to see if he can like do the thing that we're talking about now, talking about Sacred Crest and talking about the reputation of Jim Tice, and trying to like move the story forward based on the kind of things that we've been talking about tonight so far. So I always, since we started talking about this on the podcast, I had this idea that it would be great if Eye of Argon turned into a whole mythos of stories that authors could fuck around with.
Yeah.
And that would be like the great, like this hilarious, ridiculous story that everyone laughed at became like the nesting seed of all these other fun stuff with pulp fantasy that people could just play with. I think that would be great. And I would like to see that happen, which is
would make for a great
why
RPG
I'm doing
setting
this
book.
It would. It would make for a great setting, and so I'm hoping to see that happen. That's why I'm working on a Grignr story of my own.
Yeah.
Just because I'd like to see it happen, and
I look forward to reading it.
Who knows? Yeah. So.
I also look forward to reading it and wondering what kind of cover you're gonna want for it.
You know, I was just thinking about that the other day, Karen. It's like, what do you do for Grignr the Accordion? Because the cover for Sacred Crest is actually amazing. You should check it out. Like the paperback copy, the ebook, he's taken out of publication until he fixes it. But the cover art that he has for it is quite outstanding, which shouldn't surprise because Walt is actually a comic book artist himself.
Oh, okay.
And kind of a journalism of comic book. Like, he's done some comics of his own. He's worked his own, and he's done like some books about interviewing other comic book artists. So
Yeah.
he's kind of a scholar of the medium as well.
Okay.
But it's an awesome piece of art, and I would love to see something like that for when I finally get this thing done.
I'll take a look at it.
I think it's going to have 10 chapters. So yeah, I think it's going to have 10 chapters, but we'll see what happens. I'd hope to get it all done this month, but that's not going to happen.
I kind of wish I could. I wish I could go to that panel now, but
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna when I get the podcast done, I'm gonna email Walt and see what the status is of that. So we can, because I'm still on the fence. As it'd be awesome if I could go, but we'll see what happens.
yeah. Well, shall we put a pin in this?
I think
we should put a pin in this.
we've-
I think I've said what we wanted to say.
Yeah, I think we've got about gone as far as this before we start getting to straight up parody or repetitiveness. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's already been too much Eye of Argon parody.
Yeah.
Too much.
Too much.
I mean, it's better
All
than
right,
Eye of
this
Oregano.
has been Eye of Oregano. God, that probably exists. Anyway, this has been the Sacred Crest episode of Shallow and Pedantic. You should check out Sacred Crest. You can buy it in a paperback copy on Amazon.com. It's pretty awesome. You should check it out if you've ever had any interest in Eye of Argon. I am Andrew.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Kieran.
Thank you all so much for stopping by.